Welcome to the Flower Prophecies, a podcast exploring all things flower essences and remedies and flower therapy, and how this vibrational plant medicine has the potential to heal and shift our individual and collective health and consciousness. We'll be diving deep into the specifics of individual essences, nature's energetics, emotional healing and growth, as well as hearing client case studies, hosting special guests and professionals, and I'll be sharing my own personal explorations and philosophies channeled straight from the flowers. Through my own unearthing, I have discovered what I believe to be the most profound teaching of the flowers, and I now wish to share with you the practice of alchemizing fear into beauty. So welcome back to the Flower Prophecies. Today we have Heidi Smith of Moon and Bloom. Heidi is a gifted psychosomatic therapist, herbalist, and flower essence practitioner based in New York. Heidi brings together these three powerful healing modalities, creating a holistic approach to trauma recovery. She's also the author of two incredible books that I personally have loved. The Bloom book, A Flower Essence Guide to Cosmic Balance, and her newest release, The Uncommon Book of Prayer, a guide to co-creating with the universe. I'm super excited to have Heidi on today to share about her journey and the intersection of flower essence therapy and prayer in healing self. So welcome, Heidi. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Abby. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so excited for this. I'd love to first hear a little bit about your journey and how you sort of met the flowers and flower essences, and maybe what the initial sort of spark or experience that drew you to this medicine in such a deep way was.
Sure. So when I was 26 years old, I lost my brother to suicide, which was very sad and shocking. And this plunged me into some very deep shadow work. And a friend introduced me to Mimulus. His name is David Grood. And I had never heard of flower essence before. As you know, that's the it's the bravery flower. And because I was experiencing these new, just this new threshold of experience. And I was feeling a lot of fear. I felt really paralyzed in my life. And at that time, there was no way for me to comprehend what that medicine was, but I knew that it was helping, and it was actually helping me make some pretty dramatic changes in my life. And I had to get further into my studies and return to flower essences 5 years later. And that's when I was studying to be a mental health counselor. And at that time, I'd become curious about how to create more of a multidisciplinary and integrative practice, even though I wasn't sure what that looked like. But I didn't really know anybody that was blending psychotherapy with flower essences and plant medicine. And it was actually my partner. He was my boyfriend at the time. He's my husband now. He found these books by Guru Das. Do you know these books?
I have them.
Yes.
Yes.
So he gave them to me. I don't know how they came to him, but he gave them to me, and they totally blew my mind. And then there was just no turning back.
Well, they came through synchronicity, the flowers, divine orchestration.
Totally.
Beautiful. Yes, I love those books, Vibrational Medicine and the other one. Yeah.
Well, there's actually, I think there's three.
Is there three? Oh, maybe I need to get another one, the third one.
There's the herbal, there's the herbalism one and the flower essence one. I think there's another one. But it's the flower essence one was the first one.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I personally love that approach of integrating it with the sort of psychotherapy view and way of kind of healing. I'm not a psychotherapist myself at all, but my dad is a psychotherapist, and so I kind of have that sort of perception of a lot of relational aspects and things. So I love viewing the flowers and what they do in that lens. So, yeah, I think it's really beautiful that you've been able to weave these modalities together. I'd love to actually hear a little bit more about how you use those different modalities together in your practice, along with herbalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my practice is structured very much like traditional psychotherapy. I'll meet with a client for the first time for an intake, and the intake is a longer session. I'm asking a lot of questions, it's pretty comprehensive. And then we'll have follow up appointments. I specialize in supporting survivors of complex trauma. I serve mostly women identified. And I work with people short, medium, or long term, whatever the need is. I meet with people weekly or bi monthly or monthly. I try and make it as accessible as possible because I don't take insurance. And all sessions begin with a grounding and a prayer, which I ask for permission for, obviously. And then there's a portion of our time in session that we're just talking and catching up and processing whatever is arising. And then we will do focusing, and focusing is the psychosomatic integration modality that I utilize most. I've relied upon it for many years. I keep coming back to it over and over again. I think it's so profound and easy, and then people can learn to use it on their own. So I really love focusing. And then whatever presenting issues are coming up, those are complemented with herbs, flower essences, as well as dietary and lifestyle recommendations. And lately, we spend time creating some language or prayer to accompany any flower essence remedies or ritual work that the client is working with. And that has been going really well. Clients have been responding really well to that.
Beautiful. I love that addition of that. Do you find your clients have a lot of them experience working with flower essences before?
It's mixed. I'd say maybe like a third,
Yeah.
a quarter or a third of people. I'm always pleased when I meet someone whose mom was using them when they were a kid,
Yeah,
and I
that
think,
was me.
well, oh, that's so lucky that you were exposed to them as a child. That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, that's really beautiful. Do you find that those who maybe haven't experienced them before are receptive to them?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that the people who seek me out are it's a pretty self-selecting group.
Yeah.
So I think they kind of know what they're in for
Yeah.
when they come to me. I also have had a few clients whose maybe parents were more on like the alternative medicine end of the spectrum, and they've actually come more center, and
Mm.
they're actually a little more skeptical, which I understand too, you know. So everybody kind of has their place on the spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely gone through that little bit of going the other way, going the opposite way.
Mhm. Yeah, it's important to explore
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Absolutely. Could you also touch a little bit more on focusing and what maybe that involves?
Sure. So I was introduced to focusing by my teacher, Jane Bell, and I met her in 2007. And it's a modality that was created by Carl Rogers, who was actually the founder of humanistic psychology, which is what I studied in graduate school, studying mental health counseling. And then he created it with this other man named Eugene Gendlin. And the idea is, and it was actually further developed by a woman named Anne Weiser Cornell. But the general idea is that you are getting very present and going into kind of a meditative state, and just being with the physical sensations that are arising in the body. And so it's a wonderful way to make contact and build awareness of maybe it's parts work. So
Yeah.
these parts that have their own stories, their own awareness, their own attachments. And it's frequently where we will encounter our inner children, which I think is so imperative for healing work, especially with complex trauma. Um, and it also is a wonderful practice for people who tend to dissociate. And I see a lot of dissociation. Um, so it builds the ability to tolerate distress, to support emotional regulation, increases levels of awareness in the body. It just has a lot of benefits, and everybody, and anyone can really learn to do it.
Mhm.
It can be uncomfortable at first, but I really enjoy working with modalities and approaches where people can help themselves.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, I currently am learning a meditation style from a craniosacral therapist, and it's kind of an integrated approach of craniosacral therapy with meditation, and it sounds actually very similar to focusing in some ways, and it's actually helped me deepen my flower essence practice so much more, and the connection as well to nature and to all of life. So yeah, I really love that, because I see how that can how that just weaves in so beautifully.
Mm. I would love to learn more about that. I would love to learn craniosacral.
Yes,
Yeah, that's such a cool modality. And
it's so cool. It is so cool. Beautiful. So thank you for sharing all of that. That's really yeah, interesting, and I'm going to look into focusing a little bit more as well.
yeah, go to the Focusing Institute. That's where you
Beautiful.
can find
Okay, cool.
this. Yeah.
Amazing. So, in your first book, the Bloom book, which I also want to say about your books, the illustrations and the covers are just beautiful. So, so
Aw.
beautiful.
Yeah, Chelsea Granger. She's
Beautiful.
so lovely. Yes.
I love it. Yeah, they're gorgeous. So, in the Bloom book, you take a very intuitive approach to flower essences, and this resonates a lot with me. I was wondering how you feel your relationship with intuition has evolved as you have worked with the flowers.
Hmm. Yeah. So I say that you have to continually decolonize your mind to fully comprehend this medicine. And for me, that meant completely deconstructing my beliefs about healing and reality, which were, and they still are, at the previously more so than now, but they were oriented around like the 3D, the material, the Newtonian scientific level.
Mm.
And that's not a holistic understanding. And one of the natural responses to this kind of deconstruction is the development of your intuition. And so this is where a whole new realm of awareness becomes available to us. And I've found that the further you go down on this path, the deeper into this work that you go, the stronger the intuition becomes. And you just trust it more and more. It doesn't have to mean that you completely detach from or disconnect from the physical, the mental, intellectual level. It just means that it's a more conscious way of seeing and feeling and knowing.
Mm.
And also, I think it means that just because something isn't unseen doesn't mean that it's not real. Just
Mhm.
because science doesn't currently possess the capacity to measure something doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And there's knowledge, and then there's wisdom, and white men did not invent wisdom. It goes way further back than that, way before the Enlightenment period in Europe. And yet, this is still the pervading level of consciousness of Western culture, right? And yeah, I get more into intuition in my second book, and I actually list out the five types of intuition: clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, clairgnosis, and clairalience. And I know that my strongest sense is clairgnosis. It's just this innate knowing. And it's always a process of becoming and trusting that more and more.
Beautiful. Yeah, I feel mine is the knowing as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. But it's interesting because I feel like really coming back to intuition and these senses is sort of coming back, attuning more to our physical body, right? Because and it's that focusing, right? It's learning the subtle senses of our body, of our physical body, which is interconnected with everything else. And that's kind of where we can gain a lot of that intuitive information from. So, yeah.
Yes, totally. In the body. And I mean, maybe you have this experience too. It's happening in the body. It's also I'm more attuned to my environment and the
Yeah.
natural world. And like sometimes I'll be meeting with a client and a remedy will just pop into my field
Yes.
out of nowhere, right? And there's no way to explain that. But the more present and grounded we are, the more open we are to receive those messages.
Absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree. You mentioned your teacher Jane Bell before, and you also studied Egyptian mysticism with her. I would love to know how this sort of ancient wisdom has informed your modern practice with flower essences and healing.
Yeah, Jane introduced me to so much. She totally changed my life and my way of thinking about life. She was the first person to teach me about presence and what this truly means and what this feels like. And presence to me is one of the foundational teachings of the Egyptian mystery schools. And it is also foundational in my healing work because you really can't go very far without feeling safe and present. And so it's this level of being that makes a lot of things possible. Relaxation, acceptance. It also strengthens our intuition. We can connect with ourselves and others more deeply. We can co-regulate more. And I don't think that we co-regulate exclusively with other people. I think we do that with the plants and the animals and the elements. We can enjoy more, much higher levels of embodiment and peace and pleasure. Trauma survivors are usually spending a lot of time in the past or the future. So reorienting into the present is key. And being present is always safer. It's always a more empowered position to be in because you have greater access to yourself and you're in your agency. One aspect of complex trauma recovery is this re-inhabitation of the self and one's life. And there are usually high levels of dissociation and disconnection. So people have to relearn how to be in their bodies. And it can be painful and confusing, but essential to moving through recovery and hopefully into more like a securely attached, embodied, actualized level of being. And yeah, I found flower essences to be a perfect complement to that because they help people understand more of the psychospiritual pieces to the process, like the stories, the memories, the spiritual contracts that you may have made, and they address the subconscious layer. And you don't even have to fully understand what's happening or be in control. These new insights and awarenesses can develop, this new information can come in.
Beautiful. I love that. That's really nice. Have you visited Egypt?
I've been twice.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've
amazing.
stayed.
Amazing.
Yeah, so in the middle of her life, she decided that she needed to start spending a lot of time there
Mm.
and learning about the culture and the ancient history. And so she would take groups over there and work with the people there, and was having all of these amazing experiences. And so yeah, I got to go twice, and it was really life-changing both
Mm.
times.
Yeah, I'd love to visit.
Well, if you ever go, let me know. I
Yes,
few
absolutely.
people over there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, thank you for sharing all of that. Is there any other elements, I guess, of that, the Egyptian mysticism and studies that play into, yeah, your offerings now?
Yeah, totally. I would say the second big one is just the way that she introduced me to this ancient paradigm that was not patriarchal, because as you may know, the Egyptian pantheon was very much, it was many beings, but it was very much balanced between the masculine and the feminine.
Mm,
And it was all of these beings, and it was animistic, but it was also a unified field. It was all one. It's non-dual.
mm,
And so this is a very different paradigm than the Abrahamic religions that determine most of our codes and norms and even laws. And there's more reciprocity in that paradigm of being. And the balance that they were holding, that represented the optimal state for all life to thrive.
mm,
And that is a common concept throughout many ancient wisdom traditions. And it also was such an education in the feminine. All those aspects of the feminine that we've been taught to ignore, deny, denigrate. Um, and so, and this is also the domain of flower essences, the receptive, the yin, the subtle, it's the water element. Um, and it's about listening to the body. It's about watching where things might be out of balance instead of just treating the symptoms physical. That's more like allopathic medicine. It's incredibly holistic.
mm.
And so it offered me this radically different perspective of our world, which up to that point in my life, I had just perceived as real, but it's actually wildly oriented around the masculine.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I love how you weave through your books the concept of non-duality and unification. I have found that working with the flower essences, that is one of the common teachings and wisdoms that they share with me is this kind of balancing and harmonizing of the aspects of self. So it really resonated when I read that throughout the Bloom book, for sure.
Yeah, I feel that too.
Yeah.
And I feel like Dr. Bach had such a clear
Mm.
understanding of that. And yeah, I don't find that in other approaches. So it's really unique to flower
Yeah.
essences.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so interesting. I pulled a flower essence card just before we came on, and it's one of my own flower essences, which is port wine magnolia, and it's all about the divine feminine.
No way.
Yeah.
Can I see the picture of a port wine?
Oh, I don't have the picture up. It's like the
Oh,
bottle, so you can't really see it, but I'll show you it
okay. I'm
after.
gonna look it up. Is it like
Yeah.
a beautiful pink color?
It's like a mottled, like white with pink through, kind of molded through the petals, but they're really tiny, tiny blooms. And the scent is absolutely incredible. Like, it is the sweetest smelling, like You just want to keep drinking it in. It's
Uh-huh.
divine. It's so, so
Oh, wow.
beautiful.
I'm going to have to come over there to smell that then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, but it's the concept of like the wild feminine and the power that we hold, and also just which is something that I know you talk about, is this, being within the feminine without it being as a resistance to the masculine or the patriarchy, but just being in the power of the feminine because that is the natural state of it, not in the way of proving or not in the way of forcing, just being.
Just being, yeah. It doesn't have to be reactive. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the future is female. That's not what we're talking about. It's not even about gender.
Yeah.
It's about these cosmic energies of the universe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I just thought that was a little beautiful thing to share, that I pulled that beforehand. Mm. So, yeah, I've been diving into your new book, The Uncommon Book of Prayer, and it's definitely opened up a lot of illuminations around my own like practice with prayer. And yeah, I'd love to know what called you to explore prayer as a healing practice alongside your other modalities.
Yeah. I'd say that I always had a relationship to prayer. I can remember in childhood just praying to God or praying in a sort of pagan way out in the woods or up in a tree. And I remember it being very natural and conversational. When I was starting out as a practitioner, I decided early on that I was going to start every session with a grounding and a prayer. And it made me nervous at first. I wondered, am I allowed to do this? Am I going to get in trouble? Um, and fast forward a few years, my first book is out. It's COVID, and it's a very stressful time in the world. And I'm having to lean more heavily into my spiritual practices. And I just started praying a lot. And I felt this call to be very intentional with my internal language and the language that I was using outwardly. Um, and I began to see this new correspondence between the relationship between my thoughts, my words, and the flower essences.
Mm.
And it had never occurred to me before to isolate prayer as its own thing. It was like it had always been right there in front of me, but I didn't see it like that. And it was revealing itself to me in a new way. And I feel like I rediscovered it as its own methodology. And so I think of it as this co creative practice or process. And I think of it as a progression of thinking into feeling, into knowing, and eventually into being. So
Mm.
eventually arriving at a being state through prayer.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I loved this quote from your book. When I pray, I am co creating with the language, feelings, images, and elements of my prayer practice as well as the divine. And, you speaking of it as an act of co creation. I love viewing it through that lens. Could you explore the idea of prayer as co creation a little bit further, and how this perspective shift may shift our relationship with prayer, especially when we're working with the flower essences?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I equate the co-creative cycle and the wheel of the year as the same thing. Time is not linear, it's nature, and nature is seasons and cycles. And so each phase offers us opportunities to be in attunement with the energetics of that time. And we can work with that energy in accordance with it, or we can work against it. And working co-creatively means working in concert with the natural world. And it's not just me, prayer is not just me yelling out into the void. It's working with my voice connected to my heart, my history, and speaking into space. And space is alive, it has its own intelligence. If you learn more about the feminine, you understand that. And the wind or space or air element, however you want to define it, not only is alive, but it holds things and it transmits energy. And so I think of prayer and flower essences as relational medicine
Mm.
because they're both co-creative
Mm.
in this way. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, yeah, it does because one of the things that I see as the most influential and the part that both myself and clients love the most and kind of are most conscious of is reading their affirmations alongside taking their flower essences, and it kind of brings through this, no matter where the individual is in their kind of spiritual connection or unseen connection, they kind of have this realization of how much this affirmation and speaking these words alongside the flower essences actually create change. And so I totally get that. If, I feel like I understand that sort of co-creation element to it. And it's also something that I feel like most people can feel happening, can really actually witness happening in their experience when taking them.
Wow, that's cool to hear. And so, do you write those affirmations for every flower essence, or do
Yeah.
you help the client like collaborate on those?
I usually write them for every flower essence, but then I share with them if it doesn't feel resonant for them to create their own. So, but it's definitely, most of them like will receive that affirmation, and they find it so just the most beautiful aspect of it. It's like creating this ritual that they tangibly can feel this shift and this relationship taking place. So it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. I'm not surprised. I feel like affirmations have always been associated with flower essences. I don't know if Bach ever created them, but I know that that's been. I know that Patricia Kaminsky at the Flower Essence Society has written so many beautiful ones, and Judith at Alaskan Essences. Maybe there are others. Those are the two that I know of. And I think that when you hear the words, just like with the medicine, like when you hear the words that really resonate, when there's a resonance there and
Mm.
it's in alignment with where you are in your body and your feelings, um, yeah, that's like the harmonic. That's
Mm.
the spark
Yeah.
that I think creates the change, and that's really exciting to
Mm.
witness.
Absolutely. And I've even had, clients have the experience of when they're working with their affirmation, um, having the kind of real visceral reaction where they feel like they're not embodied in that affirmation, and that giving them the realizations and the observations to understand where they need to place their energy to move into that resonance.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I have a lot to say about that.
Share if you
Yeah.
wish.
Well, I guess that was like, if you want to get into the like finer mechanics of how this process kind of evolved for me, I think affirmations sometimes felt so disconnected,
Yeah.
or prayer, or whatever you want to call it. I kind of use all those terms interchangeably, but it just didn't land with me. And so that's why I was more like this book. My second book is all about prayer. It's about what is prayer and why is prayer, but it's really mostly about the how of prayer,
Yeah.
because I'm interested in helping people generate their own prayer language and
Mm.
it be in alignment with themselves and their hearts and their process. And yeah, I think it's really interesting to when you can arrive at that place where there is that resonance and that high alignment. There's really something to that. So, like for instance, one of the first prayers I was writing was, um, I am open to the possibility of feeling safe in
Mm.
this situation. Now,
Mm.
I didn't just jump to, I am safe,
Yeah.
because that's not what I was feeling. That was not congruent with my experience.
Yeah.
So I had to back it up
Yeah.
and say, like, maybe I can be safe here.
Yeah.
And then I had to practice saying that for a long time until I could get to the point of saying, I invite feeling safety.
Yeah.
So that's like a progression until I finally got to, I feel safe. And then finally I got to, I am safety.
Mm.
Not just I am safe, like I'm safe, I am safety.
Mm. Yeah.
So that's kind of how it works for me, I guess.
Totally. And I definitely understand that. I studied with Ian White, which is Australian bushfire essences.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he uses affirmations with all of his
Yes.
essences and remedies. And yeah, one of the things that he has definitely spoken of is inserting that language of it not being like a jump to being, because that's when the resistance sort of comes into play, is when there is like that jump into like, I am this, right? So he uses a lot of like, I am now, or yeah, I am open to, like you say.
Wow.
And so
So
I,
he's being very precise about the language too.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's so I curate my affirmations in that same way. So I think maybe that's where people feel that kind of ease and resonance with them, because it's not this like jump to the classic affirmation of I am. Um, yeah.
Right. Yeah, we're both talking about the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I just want to point out, like I think even just a lot of us haven't sort of seen affirmations themselves as an act or a form of prayer. And do you feel like there is something to shifting our perception of them to prayer that kind of changes our relationship to them at all? Or do you feel like it's just a personal preference of language?
Yeah, I think it's more about personal preference. I mean, prayer is such a loaded term for people. I don't know about there, but it definitely is here. And we could get into a philosophical debate about the difference between prayer and affirmation, mindfulness, spells, resonant language. I'm just simplifying it and using them all
Mm,
interchangeably. And, if the word prayer doesn't sit with you, that's totally fine. Pick another word.
yeah.
And I guess for me, I find affirmation. Sorry, that's my Ohio accent. I guess I find affirmation more of like a neutral term,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily connected to spirit or the divine, and that's totally fine if that's not your purview. For me, prayer does interface with the divine, which is both internal and external. It's both, and it goes beyond just the level of mental or intellectual.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I agree with that. I think one thing is maybe there's this perception of affirmation itself also that brings that resistance because people have experienced that resistance to the I am this thing that we speak of.
Maybe.
Yeah, so it's interesting to witness all of it and think about it all. So, I would love to, if you're open to it, hear about maybe a memorable experience where you've witnessed the transformative power of prayer in your essence practice or your personal life.
hmm Yeah, I mean, I think that there's so many examples. I'm sure as you've experienced the magic and the miracle of the flowers, I some of the stories are so wild, I don't even know how I would think of to you without like having to draw a diagram or
Yeah.
something, or like a PowerPoint presentation. But I'll just say that I don't question them anymore. And the clients that are writing their own prayers, practicing them, really engaging in a process with them, they are experiencing these big shifts and they're having their own revelations. And it's been such a joy to observe it. Clinically has surpassed what even I thought was possible in terms of outcomes. And I observe this acceleration of the work, and it's just these new and surprising possibilities. Um, and I'll say that, personally, I think writing a book about prayer is its own kind of miracle.
I bet.
um, because it's quite a daunting task to commit yourself to any body of work, right? And a book about prayer it does seem audacious to me. It's a huge topic. It's very controversial. And how would I manage to write about such a thing in a way that honored all of these cultures and histories and concepts, and from a syncretic approach, from a more interconnected way of thinking about it. And that definitely wasn't coming through my ego. That wasn't just coming from my limited mind. I used that book as an opportunity to totally let go and just let the spirit of the book write itself, and I let it be revealed. And so, yeah, I think it was really showing me how to be in co-creation with something in a
Mm,
new way I've never been before.
that's really beautiful. Yeah, I can imagine it's such a beautiful process to actually just allow that to flow through. Really beautiful.
Yeah. And I mean, writing can be all different kinds of things, and every book has its own spirit. I use all of these like birthing analogies, which I know is totally cringy, but like
No, I
it
love
really, I've never given birth to a human, but like
it.
it is like, I'm sure it's like giving birth,
Yeah.
because um you're really not in control, and it's going to do its own thing. So you might as well just be like open to it and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, absolutely. And that maybe it's the same answer, but something that I do love about your books is how you translate the like so many different realms and dimensions of life and the unseen and these various facets of our human experience into such relatable language while also offering like these really tangible practical practices. So I'd love to hear your process for bridging sort of these mystical concepts with everyday accessibility and how you find the place between honoring the depth of these teachings and while making them approachable for readers. And maybe it is just that allowing it to flow through how it wants to. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I really do try and make my work as accessible as possible and inclusive as possible. And I know that I'm covering a lot of territory. I don't, my books are not like maybe not so easy to read. I don't know, but,
I find them
and,
easy. I find them
oh,
easy.
they are? Okay, that's great. No,
Maybe that's the way
I
my
guess,
brain works. Maybe we're on the same wavelength.
I mean, I guess in terms of my writing, I'm always trying to think about the reader experience and how the message is going to be received, gauging the demographic of who is listening to me. I'd say that we're now firmly in like the second wave of the new age healing and wellness movement. So I feel like people are more acquainted with some of the subjects that I'm talking about. It's not as novel, and there's a new the levels of awareness are higher. And I'm not sure how to really articulate it clearer than that. I just kind of happens through me, like you said, and it's a mystery. And there are definitely places where I'm not sure about. For instance, I really wanted to write about magic and prayer, and that section was just not coming, and I was getting nervous. I was like, maybe I'm not supposed to be writing about this. Maybe I'm not allowed. Maybe I don't have permission. And so I picked a tarot card and I said, do I have permission to write about magic? And do you know what card I picked?
The magician?
The magician. I swear, one card, and that was it. And I was like, well, there you have it.
Yeah.
And the magician is the creative in the I Ching. It's you can do whatever you want. And yeah, having my practices and my oracles is also really helpful for that.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I think, I think that definitely, I've never written a book, but I think there definitely is always that balance of like attuning to like what your reader will receive, but also just allowing it to be so authentic to you. I think maybe people get a little bit too caught up in like making sense to everyone, whereas like, our offerings land with those who they're meant to land with. So yeah, they will receive
It's such a huge act of trust. It's such a surrender.
them.
And I've heard this said I've heard other artists and creatives and writers say this too. It's like when you're really in that state of consciousness, you have no idea if it's good or not. You don't know. You don't know if what other people, or maybe you have this feeling like, oh wow, this is really powerful, but then you don't know if how anyone else is going to receive it. So you just don't know.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly right. But it's meant to be out there for a reason. So yeah, like you say, trust is the way. Beautiful. Let me see if I've missed anything. So yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about the heart source connection that you explore through your work. And I'm particularly interested in the impact you feel flower essences and prayer can offer in deepening this connection.
Yeah. So, I'm very interested in the heart, and I consider my work very heart-centered. I guess that this is the work of becoming more present and more alive and more embodied, and also in terms of complex trauma recovery. The initial wound that you experience in complex trauma is an attachment wound. It's relational. And so the work of recovery means that you have to reattach to yourself. You have to restore that heart secure attachment to yourself. And then everything can constellate around that. So your relationships with other people, but it has to be primarily with yourself. So, yeah, a lot of my work is in service to that. And when I talk about my heart or the heart, I'm thinking about it in very undifferentiated terms. So, I think about it as spirit, as nature, as love, the divine, as the source connection. Um, so anything that we are doing to support ourselves on those levels are going to be reflexively informing and supporting one another.
Mm.
So that is why, yeah, I feel so strongly about um, not just working on like a mental or even just an emotional level, but mind, body, spirit, and also like how that's interacting with our earth, with our environment, and how are we co-creating on that level? How are we supporting reciprocity and balance in the field? That's all interconnected. Um, does that address what
Mm.
you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I really do. And I think in terms of like working with flower essences, I feel like personally, I've never experienced anything with the ability to open my heart in all of those realms as much as flower essences, you know? Um, and actually, I wanted to mention as well something that I thought of before when you were talking about prayer at one stage, and the way that you the language you're using for prayer and being really conscious of your language is like I find that the more we do use prayer or resonant language or all of these things in our everyday, the more we speak to ourselves in that way, the more we readjust the sort of negative self-talk in that way. And I feel like that in itself just really has this beautiful opening effect to heart and source, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's been a real journey for me back into my heart. I was pretty shut down and like a lot of people, and it's trauma and
Mm,
it makes sense. There can be so much armoring around the front and the back of the heart. It can be really scary to open your heart. My teacher, David Dalton, has a whole set of roses.
mm,
They're all rose
mm.
flower essences and they're all connected to the heart chakra. They're really beautiful. So I really like working with different kinds of roses and even like a rose essential oil, like anointing a rose quartz. Um, and now we're learning so much about like polyvagal theory and the vagus nerve and the heart. And I mean, there's just so much there. I mean, the Heart Math Institute, it's so fascinating to me.
It is. It really is. And yeah, it's beautiful. Um, do you make your own flower essences at all?
I do.
Mm.
Um, I live in Brooklyn, so I don't have I don't have as easy of a time making them, but I spend time in Vermont,
Yeah.
and so that is where I have made some essences, and I really enjoy that process. I think it's so joyful.
Yeah.
I've made a few environmental essences as well. I've made some in Egypt.
Ah, incredible.
Yeah, really powerful.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm hopefully going to be spending more time in Vermont and England in the future. And so I look forward to making essences there as well.
Mm. Mm. I think that process in itself is very heart opening and connection to heart and source for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Actually, some of my most like I feel like some of my most powerful sort of healings and teachings from the flowers come from making the essence rather than like taking it. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I've made essences that have like actually, I think, saved my life.
Absolutely. I don't doubt it at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I love teaching classes about how to make flower essences. I mean, that's one of the reasons I think this is like the most intelligent medicine and medicine for the future is because it's so low impact and
Mm.
anyone that has access can make them. And it's so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'm actually going to be starting teaching classes as well soon for the first time. So I'm really excited. So I just have one last question for you today, Heidi. And that is, what message do you feel the flowers and prayer are offering us collectively at this time? And what wisdom might they be extending to humanity as we navigate these transformative times?
Mm. Yeah, I think about the way that flowers came into being and the way that for hundreds of millions of years the earth was just brown and uh, green and a little blue and then they came in and all of this color arrived with all of these new possibilities and so they are a type of medicine that evolved later on in our consciousness for a reason. And, um, Julian Bernard has said, who's Bach's protege, has said that flower essences are specifically indicated for the devastating soul conditions that of our time that alienate us from nature and also our true selves. And I find that to be so true. I'm finding this time personally very challenging myself, and I'm quite privileged and resourced to be here, and yet I'm really getting pushed into some uncomfortable edges. And I also know that being here right now is not an accident. I trust this medicine implicitly. um, I think that the flowers are one of the most transformative and comforting approaches that I have to handle my karmic curriculum here. And the aspects of our time, the increasing instability, the narcissism, the too much information and content, the disconnect from ourselves and the earth, all this imbalance. I see prayer and flower essences and many healing practices as the antidote to that. Um, and we have to more fully embrace our humanity and our own hearts. And I feel like the only way I can even approach thriving right now is to do it with a lot of self-love and to fill my cup. And so loving and serving and co-creating from a full cup is what I'm committed to doing right now.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Well, this conversation has been so lovely. I've just really loved connecting with you and so grateful and appreciative of all your wisdom and love that you've shared. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be here.
And if anyone would like to check out your books or your offerings, where can they find you?
You could head to my website, which is moonandbloom.com.
Beautiful. I'll link that in the show notes. And thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope that you loved this episode with Heidi as much as I did. And if you have any feedback or would like to share anything with us, please comment on it or seek us out and share your thoughts and feelings. And I'll be back soon.